guys forgive me, and we're gonna talk a little bit about George, and it's a little bit hard, but it's good. Okay. First, before I get started, this is the headshot of George, which I like, but I also like this photo, which is him here in action, but I really like, and I feel I'm gonna leave up here, is this one, because that's just George laughing, and I realize it's not the best technical picture, but I feel like it kind of best embodies him. Is that fair? Okay. All right, so let's talk about George. George was absolutely an icon in this industry. Yesterday I was having lunch with Bill Moss, and Bill Moss has an expression I like, and Bill Moss likes to say, in our industry, there are me people and there are we people, okay? Me people are brokers that come in and they get their job done, they do deals and make money, right? That's good. We people are people that come to work and do deals and make money, and they're about something more. They help, they mentor, they get involved in the industry, they do things, right? And there's far less we people than there are me people. So Bill Moss and I were having this conversation, and I told Bill, I said, Bill, I'm going to quote you because I'm talking about George. And Bill Moss said, absolutely. If we think of what is truly the best example in our industry of a we person, George Livingston was the we person of our industry. No doubt about it, right? Yeah. So I was thinking about it, and I thought, if you're in this room today, 100% of you have absolutely been influenced by George Livingston. Now, to those of you who knew George, you would say, of course, absolutely. But there's some of you in this room who have never met George. You're just hearing his name for the first time, and you might be saying, well, John, that's fine for the people that knew him, but I didn't know him. How could I be influenced by him? And my response would be, well, you're here. And if you're here, you were influenced by George. Because George helped build this room. George helped build this industry. There's a quote that goes back to 1723, but I like this version better. It's from the movie Superman versus Batman, if you've seen it. Spoiler alert, Superman dies. And at the end, there's all these people are converging. There's this sign that says, if you're looking for his monument, look around you. And I thought to myself, if you're thinking about what is the monument to George, look around you. This room was built by George. So he's a we person. And what does that mean? Well, he was a we person to you, okay? The second example, when I think about George and him being a we person, I think about more specifically within the industry. I mean, he was an industrial guy, right? A great industrial guy. And so he was the past president of NAB Central Florida and on all these research boards. He was an industrial guy. Of course, he was a we guy in the industrial industry. Not all brokers do that, but he was. But do you know this? Do you know that the Central Florida Commercial Association of Realtors has a Lifetime Achievement Award, and George Livingston won it twice? How does that happen, right? Because he's a we person. Because people are thinking, who would give this award to? And years after they gave it again because that's how much he meant, right? You guys are aware that ICSC has a scholarship for the University of Central Florida. And what's the name of that scholarship? The George Livingston Scholarship. You understand that he's not a retail guy. You also know that he didn't go to UCF, but the ICSC Retail Scholarship at UCF is named George Livingston. That's a we guy. I texted last night with Tim Becker from the University of Florida, and I said, I just want to make sure, Tim, you knew that George had passed. And he texted me right back, and he said, that is so sad. And he went on to say, George did so much for students. He always met with them. He always met time with them. Not everybody makes time for students, but George did. He said he always did. He took chances on students, right? That's from the University of Florida. You know where George went? He went to Florida State. That's a we person, right? I spoke with Florida State the other day, and they, of course, were devastated. When I talked to Florida State faculty and the University of Florida faculty, they spoke exactly the same about George. Isn't that fascinating? That is a we person of what he did for this industry. I want to talk for a second about me personally, as it relates to George. George taught me how to run boards. If you've ever been on a board with me, and you were say how I did it, it's because years ago I met with George, and I asked for advice on being a leader on a board, and he told me how to do it, right? So if you've ever been around me, I was influenced. My father passed away in 2004. George was at that funeral. I don't know why. I don't remember particularly being that close to him a time ago, but he was there. He brought Christy Alexander with him. They were there, right? Do you know that George was friends with my mom? Do you guys? George hung out with my. Do you know this? George hung out with my stepdad. I think he spent more time with stepdad than me, which really says a lot about some issues I have, right? George would send me articles up till recently on retail trends and said, John, I thought you should know about this. So several years ago, I started working on wanting to make an impact in historically black colleges and universities. And when I started working on that, who do you think I went to for advice? George Livingston. Does it get your brain around that? Is that fascinating? So when I think about George, and I think about all those things, his loss is epic. It's huge. It's substantial. There's an African expression that says, when an older man dies, it's as if a library has been burnt to the ground. And there's truth in that, right? Because when I think about it, when we lose this major we person, it's a loss for the entire industry, even if you didn't know him. But I think it begs this question. If the we guy goes down, who should replace him? And maybe it's a challenge for all of us to think about in our own lives. Maybe we should take a little less me, but a little more we, right? So maybe all of us might think about this week, about maybe what we should think about is volunteering, helping with students. Helping with students, maybe at a university we didn't go to, but a university that needs our help, right? Maybe we should help some younger people in the industry that are struggling, trying to find their way. Maybe we should volunteer at a veterans clinic, because you know he also was a war hero, by the way, right? And that was important. He was 2016 OBJ Veterans of Influence. George Livingston. Blow your mind. But maybe we should all take a moment and sort of reflect on that. I will say this, though. When you choose to become a we person, there's reasons why everybody does it. It's self-sacrificing, right? It's hard. It also has sadness in it. When you choose to love people and you choose to step into that, there's great sorrow. There's an old expression that says, all great love affairs end in tragedy, right? And when I think about that, it could make us cynical. Like, no, I don't want to help people because I could help these students and maybe they don't make it. Or maybe I help a young person in the industry and then they could become my competitor. And therefore, I'm just not going to help at all. And I thought to myself, what does that look like when you're a military leader and you go into combat and you know that not all these guys are going to come home? So maybe as a military leader, you would choose not to love them because you don't want to get attached to them because some of them are going to get killed. But that's not the right answer, is it? As a military leader, you love them all. And then when you lose them, you go through that pain. And who more understood that than George Livingston, right? So I ask you to think about that. George Livingston was a we person. He was a we person to you. He was a we person to this industry. And he was a we person to me. And so I just would submit to you that let's spend some time today and the rest of our industry think about we people. Okay? Thank you. That concludes our